My good friend Gordon Mah Ung once told me that when you're reporting on a difficult story, you put on your reporter hat. He told me it keeps you objective. It makes it easier and takes some of the emotion out of it. So today, that's the hat I am wearing. My good friend, guide, and inspiration, Gordon Mah Ung, has passed away after battling cancer for over a year. If you know Gordon's work, you already know why it's important he's remembered for the industry. Gordon is one of the very few who inspired me to get into this. I wanted to talk through why he's important, not only for me personally, but also for the whole industry and how he's influenced over the years. I also wanted to play a few of my favorite clips from videos that I was fortunate enough to shoot with him. That's going to be at the end in a fun reel for all of you, but here's a quick example of what you're in for.
And the internet, because I know you right now, is like, yeah, this is like, I only care about value. You know, F you, NVIDIA. You know, what's up with the prices in this?
Hey, Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're in a restaurant.
Gordon most recently worked for Computerworld, but he's worked a lot of places in the industry over the years. And I've spent dozens of hours on the phone with Gordon every time we had some kind of major story. I don't know that we ever had a phone call that was shorter than 2 hours. So first, as we get into this, Gordon's family has created a GoFundMe after much prodding from Gordon's former colleagues and the press, because we all want to help his family. I will be contributing to that as well. We're linking it in the description below. It will help fund the medical expenses. If you know the US medical system, you're aware of why. Gordon is also survived by his wife and 2 kids. And so this will be helping them as well. As one other note too, before we really get into my sort of stories here, please go over to the Full Nerd channel. I have linked them below because Adam and the team over there, they have worked with Gordon forever, and they have a lot they want to share as well. And it would mean a lot to them and to me if you would also check out their video. I've linked it below for you. I first encountered Gordon's work when I was in high school. He was writing for Maximum PC magazine at that time, and I'd stop into the local bookseller once a month to buy a copy of Max PC, PC Gamer, Custom PC, and some of the others. Eventually, I only bought Maximum PC. Gordon's most influential work, in my opinion, at least for me, was his column, The Watchdog, for Max PC. The name is pretty self-explanatory. He focused on consumer advocacy. He chased down companies to get answers and to hold them accountable for things that they did to somehow screw or wrong consumers in one way or another. And you can see his influence all over the industry. For GN specifically, you can see that influence in basically every investigation that we've run. But he had a long history before that as well. A lot of people don't know this, but Gordon actually used to work for a physical newspaper as a crime beat reporter from 1993 to 1997. His job was to cover police work and crime. He told me about that time a lot. Gordon and his longtime colleague and friend Adam once told me at an event that when people ask them where they're from and they say California, the answer would be, okay. And then when they said Oakland, the answer would be, oh shit. In the 90s, Gordon did news gathering and interviews relating to crime. He's a real journalist. Gordon once told me that whenever he received a mysterious package addressed to him in the mail at the newspaper headquarters, he would go stand next to his boss while he opened it. He told me that just in case it was explosive, he didn't want to be the only one taken out by an angry mob boss. Gordon also told me that he found the work emotionally taxing. He had to interview people who were affected by crime of all types, and he had to work with police. And this, I think, is part of what eventually led him into the computer industry. I remember once telling Gordon that I'd be visiting Oakland to film a piece, and that I wasn't sure if all the police driving around would have a problem and stop for us filming in public. Gordon said, they definitely won't stop for your cameras because they won't even stop for you if you're getting robbed. And he always was able to find humor in everything. Gordon eventually joined Computerworld and later Boot Magazine to talk about technology. He worked alongside many reporters who shortly left reporting work and went into marketing or PR for big corporations. In this industry, this is also referred to as switching teams by reporters and journalists and reviewers, or as the other side of the fence. But Gordon never switched teams, and he never went to the other side of the fence. I had talked about this with him numerous times, and he liked working for consumers. There, especially back then, was a lot more money, and sometimes still is, in working for marketing or PR for these huge corporations than in doing the reporting work, especially in the magazine era. But Gordon liked working for the little guy, basically. And his superpower was not only knowing how to challenge these companies, but also knowing how to challenge the audience and knowing when it was right to tell even his supporters that they were wrong. It's one of the hardest things to do in this line of work as a reviewer, a reporter, where you realize that maybe the audience has it wrong. And the person who can stand there and tell you that and not fear for their career afterward, that is the person that you really need to hold on to in the industry. And Gordon never let that stop him, whether it was the companies who might apply pressure or the public. He always said exactly what he believed and exactly what his evidence led him to think was right. And that I will always have respect for. Although he's more recently known for his YouTube appearances, he also had many TV appearances back in the day, like this one.
Strange green monster over here from Alienware. Is this just like cool style, Gordon, if you want this to be?
Well, I think for the Alienware and also for the Falcon, gamers are hardcore PC people. They want people to know that they have pride in their ride. They don't want a Ford Taurus beige box. They want, you know, a Dodge Viper.
It's got to stand out.
It's got to stand out. You bring that to a party, or a LAN party, which a lot of game people do, and people are going to give you some looks.
Yeah. This is a Dell Inspiron 8000. What is it about this machine? You say this is the only laptop you could really play a game like Quake 3 on.
Right. The reason this Inspiron is so great is because it's one of the first notebooks out with GeForce to Go.
Yeah, let me just sort of run it here a little bit so we can see what's going on.
Which is basically a little brother to the GeForce 3.
So the big deal is it's got the big-time graphics card in there, so you can really look at a game like Quake.
It also has a 1 gigahertz Pentium 3 processor in the notebook.
Okay.
This notebook is probably faster than most of the machines that were made last year.
And those of you who remember back then may have seen a young Gordon Mah Ung featured as an expert to explain to TV audiences what any of this stuff meant. He laid the foundation for people to understand computers. And even with his earliest PC writing, dating back to the late 1990s, Gordon managed to remain current and in touch with hardware enthusiasts. I've been impressed and inspired with how Gordon kept up so well for almost 30 years of coverage and can only hope to do the same. Gordon eventually departed Computerworld and Boot Magazine as it sort of merged into his next job, which was Maximum PC. This is the one that a lot of you probably are familiar with, and whether you knew his name or not, you probably read some of his work if you read Maximum PC. He started there during the boot transition in 1998. He ran until the outlet shut down in 2014 before moving over to PC World eventually. Gordon spoke highly of his colleagues from especially the early eras of boot into Max PC. He told me about Will Smith, who's still an active PC World contributor and whom I've been talking to since being introduced to him about a year or so ago. He told me about lawyers he worked with for stories, class action attorneys, where he tried to help coordinate evidence and information that he had collected as a reporter to help consumers who were getting screwed, but who might not be able to take up a case on their own. He told me of colleagues like Andrew Sanchez, who passed away at age 29 a couple decades ago, as I understand it, and was highly respected by Gordon for his aggressive take on reviews. And everything I've learned from the people I have met who Gordon spoke highly of, has told me that Gordon knew good people from bad, and you could trust his judgment on the good. For a long time, Gordon was the editor-in-chief of Maximum PC. Adam from PC World just recently told me that Gordon never particularly liked the role of editor-in-chief and preferred to be more on the front lines of it all. Now, my favorite column that Gordon worked on was The Watchdog. Gordon wrote in this column in a witty and entertaining way while laying the foundation for serious consumer-focused reporting and some of the first of its kind in the computer hardware space. Gordon's work with The Watchdog protected thousands of consumers through the 2000s and led to him working with consumer protection lawyers and with consumers directly to help people who were wronged. A lot of his work on The Watchdog and other columns from Max PC shaped my understanding of what's right and wrong in reporting for consumers and how to focus on cutting past whatever the companies are selling to get to the core of the issue and figuring out what it is consumers need when they don't otherwise have an advocate. And I learned that from reading Gordon's work. I didn't know at the time that I would use that as a background for anything. I was in high school and read the articles and later founded GN. I founded it in around 2008, so all of this was long before GN had started, that he laid the foundation for some of the stuff that even after it started, it would take me a decade to really start getting into. Gordon's consumer-focused reporting became a structural keystone for the way we operate, and I think a lot of other people in this space who were inspired by his work. And the work he did the whole time, it was, although very controlled and safe, the way he managed it, still technically higher risk stories from the companies. And Gordon always worked under major publishers, which sometimes made this challenging. I spoke with Will Smith, Gordon's former teammate, about his time working with Gordon, who said this, quote, "I used to love sitting next to him so I could listen in on the calls when he'd put someone to the coals. I called it his 60 minutes moments because there were times you'd hear someone yelling at him through the earpiece of his phone and he'd just say, 'Thank you for your comment.'" Smith continued and said, quote, "He needed the big publisher to push against. He's anti-establishment, but loved working inside the establishment." When we were covering Asus, Gordon called me to tell me stories about the Watchdog and similar warranty issues he had written about when consumers emailed or sent them physical letters to the editor back in the day. And it felt like a parallel to what I would eventually be doing. Gordon would detail to me work he had done that led to companies being forced to provide support for consumers after previously rejecting their tickets with talk of coordinating with the appropriate authorities. He told me these things to help me understand where we could focus our efforts to actually get a result and not just complain on the internet. Gordon directly influenced a lot of our reporting. For me, he acted as a guiding force to keep me grounded when the story was strong enough to just let the damn story speak on its own. And he would tell me when he thought it was okay to get more aggressive in the language or when I should dial it back and just say what happened and let people come to their own conclusions. And he always had a good read on for when to do which of those. I called Gordon nearly weekly to tell him about the big stories we had, the wild tips that were coming in, a lot of them unverifiable. But I wanted to share them with someone because a lot of the information that comes into us, sometimes we can't verify it and we can't responsibly report it, but you want to tell someone. And that someone has to be trusted, and that was Gordon for me. During these calls, I would regularly ask Gordon, I need you to tell me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong? And a lot of the time, he never just said yes. But what he would do is say, well, maybe you could phrase it this way, or have you looked at it from this angle? And have you considered these factors? And I'd go spend another week looking into those factors and finding that there's a lot more nuance than I might have considered originally. And that's where he kind of helped with striking the balance between a healthy level of outrage and professionalism to try and achieve something. And I hope that I've learned enough from those calls and learned enough from him where I can continue to figure out how to balance that on my own, as I won't have him to call anymore. While at Max PC, Gordon also helped in publishing the Dream Machine feature, which focused on spending the most possible money to make the craziest possible computer. It was a shared article among the Maximum PC family that would inspire interest in parts that you'd otherwise never get to see in person. Maximum PC also had a podcast where a much more vulgar, fired up version of Gordon indirectly produced internet soundboards for his early memes that he gave to a loyal, growing fan base.
I really identified with Wesley Crusher. I like that character.
Gordon told me many times of how he witnessed multiple closings of publications in this industry and others where staff writers would show up and simply find that the locks had been changed and they'd lost their jobs. Gordon's colleague Will Smith told me this, quote, "In 2001 to 2002, we had, I think, 7 rounds of layoffs, and he kept asking if this was the last round. All the time, Gordon made plans for what he was going to steal when he got the axe. He knew what the copper wire was worth, Steve." After working for Max PC and after it shuttered, Gordon moved to work for PC World, where he remained until his final sign-off. He always worked under major publishers. Gordon liked drag racing computers for benchmarks. He liked testing the best of the best CPUs. He loved running benchmarks that spat out a number and just told you which one was better and by how much. He was very enthusiastic about those improvements, and Gordon could respect and appreciate the advancements while also remaining critical of value or if consumers should buy it. I tried to hire Gordon and Adam multiple times. I remember standing in front of them at an event, and one of them, I think it was probably Gordon, making a joke about not knowing how long they would have their jobs. And I said I could snap my fingers right now for you guys specifically, and we'll figure it out later and make the jobs today. We never really seriously pursued trying to figure that out, and not long after that, Gordon received his diagnosis. I will forever regret that I didn't get to work with him directly in the same company, but I am extremely grateful and fortunate and lucky that I was able to work with, as I see it, the GOAT. I got to at least work with him side by side in the field, and that was lucky to have benefited from his level-headed guidance to keep me grounded. So with some of his history better known, I wanted to share a couple stories I had with Gordon before we get to the supercut. Back when I went to buy Maximum PC to read his columns in high school, I was probably about 15 or so, and I remember driving to a bookstore to buy the new edition of Max PC. You get your permit pretty early in the US. I parked in the wrong spot for the wrong location, quickly ran into the store to buy it. I came out, my car was gone because it had been towed because I wasn't supposed to park there, and it was $180 to get it back, which is untold fortunes with today's inflation. And I made this joke with Gordon many times. I didn't know him at the time, but many, many years later, I would regularly make the joke about how Gordon owes me $180 because I ran into the store to buy his magazine for his column. And realistically, the amount of knowledge and training that Gordon has given me has far and away exceeded the true value of that ever. But it was a joke we liked to make. I somewhat recently told Gordon that I actually used those Maximum PC magazines to find an inroad to a job I later had at Dell, where I have a huge stack of magazines with these sticky notes on them. And the reasoning for this was I went through them. I remember reading the advertising as a teenager and just thinking it was so much cringe and it didn't connect with the audience that Alienware thought it connected with. And so I flagged them, and I was able to arrange a meeting with an Alienware marketing guy and sat down with him and went through it and explained what I thought would be better marketing and showed him some mock-ups I made in Photoshop. And I was not old enough to be hired there yet, but they did eventually get me into the test lab a couple years later, and it was because of bringing in these Alienware ads in Maximum PC magazines and presenting my case for what could be better. And Gordon, when I told him the story, said to me, at least those ads were good for something. In high school computer engineering classes, we had homework assignments to write mini articles and recaps based on current events that were being reported in technology media. I would refer to the Tech Report by Scott Wasson and Maximum PC, where I'd go buy his columns in the magazines after class. And somewhere around I don't know, plus or minus decade later, these mini recaps of news stories and technology for a high school class where I was reading Gordon's work, those recaps set the foundation for what eventually became Hardware News, which many of you know and has now received millions of views over its tenure. And its foundation was set upon reading Gordon's work, and again, Scott Wasson's work, and basically doing a mini Hardware News for a class. And so once again, Gordon's influence is everywhere in my work. I called Gordon with a lot of ethics questions. Ethics in reporting is complicated. There's conflict of interest at every possible turn. And I care a lot about it. I don't always do it perfectly, but Gordon is who I went to as a trusted source for a complicated topic. And not only would I not trust anyone else with a lot of the information I shared with Gordon, and will never be able to, I also knew that even if I could, Gordon really, by my view, was the only person in the entire industry I considered not only fully trustworthy, but fully qualified to answer the complicated topics of how do you deal with some of these difficult ethics questions in a report. And he remained true to his beliefs, and I knew he would tell me when I was wrong. And so that's what was great about working with Gordon. And again, one of my favorites being that I once had a conclusion I knew in advance would go against public opinion. I called him and I said, what do I do about this? It's like, it's one thing to go against the company, it's another to go against your audience. And Gordon asked me what my evidence was for the report. He asked me if I believed in it. And when I answered those questions, he said, screw it, say what you think is right. And I've stuck by that, and it hasn't really led me wrong. So I intend to keep that spirit alive in my work as my way of representing Gordon's impact on this community. He was, no one will ever be able to match how entertaining of an antagonizer Gordon was for the audience. Where in our videos with them, there's a playlist linked below of all the Gordon videos if you want to see them. He would regularly say, I'm going to play devil's advocate, and then he'd make arguments from the viewpoint of what he called the internet. And then he would respond to those arguments as himself. And he was brilliant at it. And you should watch some of that old content. Gordon would regularly talk to me about how there were different journalism hats, as he called them, and he taught me about them. His views were that there's just being a reporter. You put your reporter hat on to report the hard news that doesn't need a lot of flourish. He told me about activism journalism, where you get directly involved as the reporter to try and help whoever's affected. He would talk about advocacy journalism, fighting for people, where it starts to blend some of those complicated lines of you're putting yourself into the story, but it's with this specific intent of trying to help the people who are affected by it. And that's where I think I've learned the most from Gordon, which is that he, as far as I could tell, felt strongly that the rules of the reporting and the engagement with companies and consumers were nuanced and situational, and knowing when which rule applied is what would make someone good at their job. And that's what I've tried to pick up from him every time we talked. Gordon will forever remain an inspiration for me. We instantly got along when we first met each other. I think it was Adam who worked with me to film a video for PC World during one of the Intel launches where I got on camera with Gordon, and that was when I learned that Gordon always does 2 takes of his intro. And we got along great. It was like we'd already known each other forever. And from my perspective, that's sort of true, I guess, because I grew up reading his work. But I always loved filming with Gordon. He remains my favorite guest I have ever filmed with, and I always looked forward to it. He'd call or text anytime we had a major investigation and talk about how crazy they were. I'd follow up with him on what they were doing. And actually, in fact, earlier this year, Gordon had sort of handed over to me the keys of some tips he had gotten over a decade ago about some pretty interesting stories in the hardware world that he wasn't able to follow up on back when he got them. And he gave me the information I needed to pick that story up and maybe one day put it together. But it would be pretty hard. But I will try to do my best someday in the distant future. I put together some of my favorite clips. In my opinion, Gordon is the GOAT. I will think of Gordon with every major investigation we publish. I'll remember his guiding words on maintaining fair but appropriately tempered coverage of major industry events. And I will miss and remember fondly his presence at every trade show and every event we do for the rest of my career. People are wrong when they say, don't meet your heroes, because you absolutely should, and I was fortunate enough to have met mine. Here's the clip. What's up, Internet? That feels weird to say. I'm taking Gordon's line. I am here with Gordon from PC World. Hey everyone, we're at CES 2020, and I am joined again by Gordon. Everyone, I'm joined by my favorite person to co-host with, Gordon from PC World. Hey guys, I'm joined by Gordon again.
Hey.
Gordon is a frequent attendee for our videos.
Flyer, if I get enough miles, I get a free episode.
And I have a lot of respect for Gordon's reporting. He takes a, I think, more responsible journalism approach before he starts yelling at the internet.
Yes, then I start yelling at the internet.
And then it devolves from there. And we have a really fun topic. Gordon, the question is Intel screwed part 4?
Part 4.
Part 4, we've been doing this series for several years now. Broadly speaking, is Intel screwed? Is Intel actually screwed?
Internet, you will disagree. You will piss and moan in the comments all day. You will cry about it, scream about it, go on Twitter and Reddit, no, and then you go to buy your NVIDIA card. And the internet, because I know you right now, is like, yeah, this is like, I only care about value. You know, F you, NVIDIA. You know, what's up with the prices?
Hey, Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're in a
Steve.
restaurant. I like how you started to swear and then you stopped and you're like,
Can I say
no,
that
we're on
here?
Steve's
I don't know if I
channel.
can.
It's okay.
Yeah, you're right. I can say it on Steve's channel. This is a thing. Stop saying the things because unclassy. You should not turn hardware into NBA Twitter.
So they lost, right? Intel needs 2 different types of cores. AMD only needs 1, therefore AMD is better.
Well, that's true. That's what the internet says. I would disagree because as the person
With the internet?
I would disagree with the internet, unfortunately, because
Do you still want a career?
I do not think. Well, that's why people they don't like me.
And walk into Best Buy. What is it you call them? Blue shirts?
Blue shirts. Yes. I have a Best Buy shirt. Bought for Halloween. I want to go into one day.
We should do that. We should. Adam, can we do that? Can we follow Gordon into a Best Buy?
Yes.
Can we get him arrested?
Yes.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah, see, it's just, I think it's rude, frankly, if Intel wants to make a competitive product that makes my choice look bad. Don't you think so?
I think internet, you should just realize things get better. If one company simply won all the time and never lost and had total control, they would stop making things better. That's the way it's supposed to work. So it's good. It's actually good. Yes, internet, I know you don't like it. You take it personally that they make something better. So you pick something and then you shout about it or on Twitter or Reddit or something and you get in arguments. Just don't get so wrapped up in it, man. It's not you. It's not the physical representation of you. Just buy the thing, play the game, run the app, enjoy it. You're like, oh, I got a good deal. Build it. No, you don't have to shut up. I mean, like, yeah, I built it.
That's what you said before we were filming, though.
Okay, yes, shut up. Because
Small form factor people shut up.
I think
Right,
people,
only small form factor people should shut up. And if you want to know why, you should watch the video we did on his channel on PC World. But
So I don't understand why suddenly everybody wants
just buy it.
Why does it? No.
Moving on.
I don't have my anti-static bracelet.
The
my
wireless
one. We're gonna throw all the memes out there.
Yeah, that's right.
All the memes. No, but the thing is, they have to sell old stuff because this is a business reality thing. Grown-ups have to sell things to make money, and they're gonna sell lousy things.
But don't worry. Well, maybe worry.
Maybe we're a little bit.
Maybe worry a little bit.
But the good news for AMD fans is AMD is growing up because this is a good problem to have for AMD. Well, I mean, it's not because you have too many old parts. But I don't think people care because it's desktop. And I love desktop, you love desktop, we love desktop, Computex loves desktop, Taiwan loves desktop, US loves desktop.
Everybody loves desktop.
But
Gordon.
nobody buys them.
You
okay?
sound like a Microsoft marketing rep right now.
But the entire world
Yeah,
buys.
like, I'm waiting for you to go Steve Ballmer on me and start jumping around on stage.
For FIC to do that launch of the original K7 board, it was like one person ran out to see if they were going to get smashed by the truck coming down the road, which was Intel at the time. If you need a decoding wheel with 4 levers of decode rings, you probably have too many CPUs.
5.
So, is it 5? I do want to say one thing to the community who have, for years and years and years, have said, oh, where's my paste 10? It's just paste 10. Where's the solder? Well, you got solder now, so you can't complain about them giving you solder. So I just want to make sure people got that straight. Solder, they get solder's back. You can't now ding someone for giving what you've asked for. I mean, that's your decision. You don't have to do it. You can ride a bike or take a bus to work because you want to save the planet. That's cool. That's all your thing. If I want to take an F-250 and idle with the air conditioning on and the windows rolled down, that's my thing. Everybody wants to do their thing. But I'm just saying, you can't
So
There are people-
in this analogy, to be clear,
But there's people
buying
that
Threadripper for Adobe Premiere is an F-250 with the windows rolled down.
I like
idling.
F-250s. I'm just saying. But sometimes the reason why people post stupid ass videos on TikTok, doing dumbass things, walking into a Best Buy trying to pretend you work there, is because now people are talking about you. Because you want to. I mean, the sad thing about today's world is, if you're not in the headlines, people are not thinking about you, and all they can remember is the bad publicity. I think a lot of people covered
So
it
you
well
should
enough.
create more bad publicity.
It's a crappy world we
Because
live
if your
in.
option is no publicity or more recent bad publicity,
Yes.
I guess you choose that one.
They say that there's no such thing as bad publicity, except for
I-
actual bad publicity. But I do wonder how in the world does Intel get itself into the mind of it?
Gordon, thank you for joining me.
the time.
Thanks for joining me.
Gordon, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you all for watching. Gordon, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Gordon, thank you for joining me.
Okay.
Thank you, Gordon, for doing this interview opportunity with Gamers Nexus. Why are you holding the mic? I should be holding the mic. But anyway, this is channel Gamers Nexus. We'll be signing out now. Back to you, Dave.
That's not actually what I say. We'll link them below. Gordon's over there. What's your title? Editor-in-chief?
Executive editor.
Executive editor. So does that come with like a cigar and a smoking jacket?
I wish. I have an almost corner office. I have a near
corner.
almost corner cubicle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can check Gordon out and his almost corner cubicle on PC World. We'll link them below. Thank you, Gordon, for joining me.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gordon, for joining me.
Thanks.
And Gordon, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Steve.
And we'll see you all next time. Okay.
Oh, you're right. I got too excited. Don't be haters. Don't be haters. It doesn't benefit her. It's not classy. Be classy. Be classy, internet. That's my message for you. Is like, you know what? It's like you bought one product, like things are going great, and then you lose. If you're classy, you're like, hey, good battle, you won. We'll get you next time.
Right.
Whatever. If you're like, oh, you did something in 1988 or this, and then this thing, and then you this much power, and then you change the socket, you're just being unclassy at that point.
Okay. Right.
Right? That's
Right.
just not classy.
Right.